what that tends to do is it tends to make us very hyper-focused on what it was that triggered your pain, as opposed to taking a step back and trying to understand why it was vulnerable in the first place. G'day and welcome back to the channel. Now, if you're someone who's ever hurt your back coughing and sneezing, what I want to present to you in today's video is I want to present a case as to why there may be more to that than you originally think. Now, in a lot of cases, you feel fantastic and then you cough and sneeze and you're like, oh, I've hurt myself. There's pain that you didn't have beforehand. So it's very, very easy to feel like the coughing or the sneezing was the thing that gave you that pain. But what I want to give you guys by the end of this video is the perspective to understand why there was potentially something going on before that, why the coughing and sneezing is generally the last straw as opposed to the start of something brand new, and then what you can do to decrease those symptoms if it does happen to you / prevent them so it doesn't happen to you, and then give a view at the end as to what you need to consider that potentially made that likely to happen in the first place. So if you're going to enjoy this video, please consider leaving a like rating down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. And if you do find this video genuinely helpful and potentially groundbreaking in some way, please consider leaving a super thanks donation on the video. It's just a great way to help support the channel going forwards. Now, with that being said, when you do cough and sneeze and hurt yourself, it does feel instantly terrible. Maybe it feels like you put your back out, you've done something where you felt good beforehand and then bang, it hurts, and then you're left with the legacy of that action for a number of days. And there's one problem with that kind of thinking, even though it is very natural to feel that, and that is that it makes your back pain feel very unpredictable, so that when this pain goes away, then you're left with this sense that maybe the next time I cough and sneeze, which is inherently normal, but you're left feeling like that anything could happen the next time that you do that. And they can leave you in this sort of very low grade, sort of anxious, worried state that isn't good for your body long term. But better still, it doesn't give you a sense that you can control what's going on, because if you have to cough and sneeze, you have to cough and sneeze. You can't stop that. You can't suppress that to any large degree where you stop it from happening. So if you feel like your back pain is linked to those things happening, then again, it doesn't give you a sense of control that you can do something about it. So I want to talk to you about why you should be considering this the last straw and not the start of something brand new. And the reason for that is quite simple. What a cough and a sneeze is essentially is just a shock wave of force and pressure that goes through your body. And what it tends to do is it tends to find something that wasn't perfect to begin with and potentially turn it into something nasty. Now, you can have some low-grade dysfunctions completely asymptomatic, and a cough and a sneeze will never turn that into something, or it won't tip you over that threshold to become painful. But if you're already creeping towards that threshold and just below it, that cough and sneeze can potentially be the final straw that tips you over the edge and turns it into something that may have happened down the track anyway. With that in mind, what that tends to do is it tends to make us very hyper-focused on what it was that triggered your pain, as opposed to taking a step back and trying to understand why it was vulnerable in the first place. So the one thing I want to get you guys to think about here, and we can do this with our trusty ball, so whether it's a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball, if you take the ball and go hunting around the area that's become sore. So for example, if you coughed and sneezed and you think, crap, my back really hurts, you can't move, it really feels uncomfortable, there will be signs and symptoms that we can look for that can give us clues as to where your dysfunction was. So if you are in pain at the moment because of this, then obviously we need to make sure you're very respectful and very gentle. We're looking for things that feel stiff and tight more than tender. But if you're right in the midst of a painful episode, there may be some tenderness associated with this, so be very gentle and respectful. But if you're someone who's just clicked on this video and you're thinking, geez, this has happened to me before, I want to try and learn why this happened in the first place, what you're looking for is a little bit different. You're just looking for areas that feel stiff and tight. There may not be any real tenderness associated with it. There might be a tiny little bit if there's a spot that's on its way to becoming an issue. But again, your priorities are a little bit different with this exercise. So either way, we can figure out exactly what we're looking for just by running a ball through the area to see what we can find. So a great place to start. Again, if we start sort of just somewhere in the middle of the back, right in the middle there, we want to get the ball just to come off a little bit to the side. So we're not on the spinous processes or the bumps. We're just off to one side where the muscle tissue is, but more importantly, where the joints are underneath. And all I want you to do here, as we do every single time with this exercise, is that we don't want you to roll up and down, but ideally we want you to get deeper into the body to where the joints tend to be. Start right next to the spine on one side, get a sense of how easy the ball sinks in. Does it feel stiff? Does it feel tight? Does it feel tender? Compare everything to the other side, and then get a sense for which side feels the most involved. Now, one side, the ball will sink in easier. The other side will feel a bit more restricted. That is the side that you need to spend some time on freeing up. Even if you coughed and sneezed and generated some right-sided back pain, but then when you dig the ball in, you feel like there's more restriction and stiffness on the left-hand side, follow the restriction and stiffness more than being seduced by the pain. Remember, the pain is just a symptom that's come on recently. The stiffness and the tightness has more likely been there long before that. And if that's restricted, it can cause some dysfunction anywhere around that. We need to respect it, obviously, but if it's not also stiff, tight, and restricted where it's painful, we actually need to be where it tends to be. And that can be directly next to it on the opposite side. It can be a little bit above, it can be a little bit below. And as always, once you've had enough on the spot, move it out a little bit wider onto the rib cage, repeat the same process. Once you've had enough there, move it up a little bit, then come back into the spine again. Just work your way around that area, trying to free up as much of that restricted tissue as possible. And what you'll find is you should then feel like your ability to move and twist and even take a deep breath if it's your rib cage that you're working on, all of that will improve immediately. And again, the next time that you cough and sneeze, you'll have confidence that you're not throwing a cough or a sneeze into a system that's already dealing with some dysfunction. So it's not the icing on the cake, it's not the last straw. It has the capacity to absorb that force as much as possible. Now, it's the same conversation if it's down at the lower back. Just move down a little bit lower, go hunting for those issues, get rid of those issues so that the next time you cough and sneeze, you feel very confident that there isn't anything there for that cough and sneeze to pick on. Now, as we always talk about on the channel, it's not enough just to go looking for those areas of stiffness and tightness. We need to understand why those areas are stiff and tight in the first place. But as I explained briefly, if it is really stiff here, there has to be a reason why that's stiff. There has to be a reason why one side feels stiffer and tighter with the ball than the other, why it's up high, down low. It has to be there for a reason, otherwise it shouldn't be there at all. And for most people, it is a legacy of the shapes and the postures that we get into. So if you are someone who spends a lot of time sitting down at a computer, whether you drive a lot, playing instruments, whether you're someone who sits up in bed and reads or uses your laptop, it doesn't matter what you do day to day. The important thing to think about with any back pain, let alone that comes from coughing and sneezing, we need to understand what your ideal position is and then how often and for how long you're out of that ideal position, because the things that become stiff and tight because we unknowingly ask them to. So if we put more pressure through a part of your body starts to reinforce that and stiffen that up and toughen that up and recruit musculature over the top of that over time to support that position. Because without you realizing it, you're telling your brain and nervous system that that is an important position that it must now support under gravity. So if you want to take this to the end of the conversation and say, right, well, coughing and sneezing is normal. There is no reason why you deserve to get pain and soreness from coughing and sneezing unless there is some subtle, hidden, pre-existing dysfunction there that coughing and sneezing exposes. And that pre-existing dysfunction is most likely contributed to by the everyday shapes and postures that you're in. If you want to make sure that you give yourself the best chance to feel fantastic during a cough and sneeze, obviously preempting that with a loose spine and a loose rib cage is essential. Your body's most likely going to default into the position that you've told it you value the most often. So if you are sitting in this position a lot, when you cough and sneeze, you're more likely to get back into that shape as your body looks to find some stability. So if you can consciously try and keep yourself in a straighter position and take any of that direct hinging or biasing out of the equation, even with some pre-existing mechanical stiffness and dysfunction, you are more likely to spread that load more evenly if you're already doing it from a better position. Again, it's a little bit of a left of center idea, but it's a very common thing that I see with my patients where they come in and they say, I coughed and sneezed and put my back out, or my pain came from coughing and sneezing. It's really important psychologically to take a step back and break it down to show you that yes, that was the thing that most likely caused your pain, but at the same time, that shouldn't have happened if something else was going well beforehand. So again, it gives you a lot more control. It makes things a little bit less anxious for you going forwards, where you can have full confidence that by freeing this stuff up, working to get into a better position more throughout the day, when you do come back to coughing and sneezing again, then it shouldn't have the same impact and you're far less likely to become problematic from that. So I hope that was helpful. If it was, let me know down in the comments below. Are you someone who does get pain from coughing and sneezing? Have you had it previously? Does this information make sense in terms of the way that we presented it? Obviously, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hope to see you in the next video, but until then,